and welcome to my channel. I'm Sarah, the Windy City Baker, and in this series of 5 videos, we're going to do a deep dive on everything pound cake. Today's video is the first chapter in this series where we'll explore the history of pound cake. Join me as we journey down the baking rabbit hole. What do you think of when you hear the term pound cake? A sweet cake that's perfect for all occasions because it can be dressed up or eaten plain? Or maybe a cake that's simple to make and a staple in most bakers' recipe collections? For me, I think about breakfast growing up and eating a slice of pound cake with fresh fruit or even munching on a slice of my mother-in-law's lemon pound cake while catching up in her kitchen. Some people believe that a pound cake is called that because it weighs a pound after it's been baked, but this isn't true. It's called a pound cake because each ingredient weighs 1 pound. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first start by going back in time to talk about the history of pound cake. Doing a basic Google search on the history of pound cake comes back with many results, showing that the first published recipe in an American cookbook was by Amelia Simmons in American Cookery. This recipe was published in 1795. But what most of the websites neglect to say is that the first published pound cake recipe was actually in The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Simple, an English cookbook written by Hannah Glass in 1747, which was almost 50 years earlier. The original recipe pretty much boiled down to a cake that was made from a pound of flour, a pound of sugar, a pound of butter, and a pound of eggs. At the time when most people were illiterate or not able to read or write, this simple recipe was likely easy for anyone to remember without needing to refer to a cookbook. According to a New York Times article around the time the first recipe was published, pound cake was a popular dessert served during the 12th night or Epiphany celebration. Now, in case you're not familiar with this holiday, the 12th night was the last day of a Christian festival celebrating the 12 days of Christmas, and it happened during the first week of January. According to the article, it was an English tradition that during the celebration, one drank mulled wine and ate pound cake. As part of the festivities, the pound cake was incorporated into a party game. Now, before the game started, a pea or a bean were either baked directly into the cake or hidden in the sugar glaze on top of the cake, with the bean in one half and the pea in the other. Men would eat slices of cake from the bean side, and women would eat from the pea side. Whichever guest found the bean would be the king of the party, and the person who found the pea would be the queen. This pound cake game sounds very similar to the king cake tradition that's part of Mardi Gras, but that's another episode. Fast forward a few hundred years, and pound cakes are no longer the center of holiday parties and are typically seen as an everyday type of cake. It's frequently eaten as a slice for breakfast or during casual get-togethers. While it's not generally seen as a treat for special occasions, it could actually be a really great option, especially if you're planning to make a tiered cake, because pound cake is pretty dense and it's sturdy enough to keep its shape when you're stacking it. Over the years, pound cakes made its way from England to other countries where they put their own spin on the recipe. In France, the pound cake is called le quatre quarts. I don't speak French, so please forgive the horrible pronunciation. But this version originated in Brittany, a peninsula in the northwestern region of France, and the name literally means 4 quarters. These quarters pertain to the 4 main ingredients that are added into the cake in equal amounts. Typically, you would start by measuring the weight of the eggs and then add equal amounts of butter, flour, and sugar. Now, while most accounts say that the pound cake is English in origin, while I was researching the French 4 quarters cake, I came across a recipe in Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking cookbook, where she stated, quote, "The English like the formula so much that they use a pound of everything, hence of course the pound cake." The implication of this statement is that the French invented the cake recipe and the English then adapted it. Now, I haven't been able to find any evidence to support this, but it's possible that the pound cake's origins are actually up for debate. Now let's travel to Mexico for another pound cake variation called the panqué. Not only does its name sound almost exactly like the pound cake, but the recipe is also very similar to the one that we know and love. In Mexico, there's a long tradition of eating pan dulce, or sweetbread. This tradition was heavily influenced by the French when they briefly occupied Mexico during the 19th century. It's thought that during this French occupation, the recipe for pound cake was popularized in Mexican bakeries. Since then, there have been many different panqué versions that are very popular in Mexico, including el panqué chino, a sweetbread that's essentially a pound cake cupcake that's baked in a paper wrapper, el panqué de chocolate, which is a chocolate pound cake, and a Garibaldi, which is a pound cake that's glazed with honey or apricot jam and covered with sprinkles. Last but not least, we're going to discuss pound cake in the United States. Now, adaptations to the original English recipe were present right from the very first published pound cake recipe in American cookery. Not only were additional flavors added, like rosewater, spices, and brandy, but the baking technique had also changed to incorporate whipped egg whites, which helped to lighten the batter. During the 1800s is also when we start to see toppings added to the pound cake recipes. For example, the author of Virginia Housewife suggests serving the cake with melted butter and sugar, which sounds absolutely amazing. And in Modern Cookery, for private families, it's suggested to ice a cake with sugar glazings. Over the years, the general pound cake recipe has had many modifications. Not only did recipes get a little smaller, which was helpful for home bakers, but chemical leavening agents like baking powder or even baking soda were added to make the cake texture a little less dense. Other variations you might run across include adding oil instead of butter, adding cocoa powder to make a chocolate pound cake, substituting sour cream, yogurt, or even ice cream for some of the butter to help increase moisture within the cake, adding flavorings like vanilla, lemon, orange, or almond, and even adding mix-ins like blueberries, currants, cranberries, cherries, chopped nuts, or even chocolate chips. Now clearly, this cake lends itself to tons of different flavor combinations, which makes it a really versatile dessert option. Now, so far we've primarily talked about pound cakes made in home kitchens, but at the tail end of the 1800s, we start to see pound cakes entering the mainstream retail market in the United States. One of the first well-known brands that began selling pound cake in the United States is Entenmann's. In 1898, William Entenmann, who was originally a baker in Germany, opened his own bakery in Brooklyn, New York. He began delivering his freshly baked goods from door to door in a horse-drawn wagon, and during that time, their all-butter loaf cake, which is essentially a pound cake, became a bestseller. Since opening, they've sold over 700 million pound cakes. Now that is a lot of cake. You might also find it interesting to know that Entenmann's was the first company to invent see-through packaging for baked goods. Before this, baked goods had been sold in cardboard boxes that didn't allow customers to see the cakes inside. But with the invention of the cellophane window in the top of the cardboard box, people were now able to see cakes in the packaging at the grocery store, just like if they were shopping at a bakery. Although clearly you can see that they've gotten away from this in their packaging. Another brand that's popular across the country is Sara Lee. I'm a little biased when it comes to this brand since it's based out of a Chicago suburb and I grew up eating their desserts. But biases aside, their all-butter pound cake was released in 1951 and quickly became a favorite. People from other states began asking for Sara Lee products to be shipped to them. The owner, though, knew he wouldn't be able to ship his fresh baked products and have them get there in good shape. So he developed a process for freezing that retained the quality that everyone had come to know and love while offering the ability for mass distribution around the country. This new process involved freezing and shipping baked goods in the same foil container that they were baked in. This is something that's really common today, but at that time, no one had done this before. This revolutionary process not only helped to reduce production costs and costs for the consumers, but it also led to huge success for Sara Lee products, including the pound cake. If you're looking for the perfect time to make a pound cake, try it out on March 4th or National Pound Cake Day. That being said, you don't need to wait for a special occasion. This is the perfect cake for a breakfast slice or to have when guests are coming over, or really anytime that you're craving a cake. The best part is you can customize it with pretty much endless flavor variations, and it's super beginner friendly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified when the next video is up. Join me in our next episode where I'll be making the first published pound cake recipe from 1747 by hand. No electric mixers allowed. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you the next time we journey down the baking rabbit hole.